Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Business. I'm Kay Miller, also known as Muffler Mama. I've been the #1 salesperson in a male-dominated industry, a successful entrepreneur for over 30 years, and now my mission is to help you build a business and brand nobody else can compete with. If you're ready to break out of the pack and create your own uncopyable advantage, stay tuned. My guests and I are here to help. I'm here with Jessica Rhodes, and Jessica is a pioneer in the podcasting field. She founded Interview Connections, the very first podcast booking agency, in 2013, back when no one else was doing it. Since then, her company has booked more than 30,000 podcast interviews for over 800 clients, and she helps entrepreneurs go from being the best kept secret to building businesses that generate millions in sales, sell thousands of books, and transform lives. Jessica, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Kay.
This has been fun chatting and getting to know you a little bit. Before we started recording, I know that you started this business. We talked about the podcasting journey. Maybe you can kind of go through that when podcast really hit the big time. But you started this working with your dad. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was pregnant with my first child, it was late 2012. I had that switch that flips for a lot of parents where I was like, I don't want to do what I'm doing. I was doing door-to-door work for a nonprofit. And I know I want to be a stay-at-home mom when the baby comes. But then I didn't know what I would do. So I asked my parents for advice. And my dad said, you should start a virtual assistant business. You can work online, you can work from home, and I'll be your first client. And so my dad became my first client, which basically meant he was my boss because I was, he was my only client and I was working in his business. And I learned the ropes. I learned about online entrepreneurship. I learned about marketing. He took me to conferences. Like I saw the whole Dan Kennedy, JKIC world. I met a lot of, made a lot of great connections through my dad's online world and his entrepreneurship community. And a few months into working with my dad and doing client support and administrative work for him, he asked me to start booking him on podcasts and getting people booked on his podcast as a guest. He goes, I think this will be perfect because it's a very transferable skill from door-to-door work. Instead of knocking on doors, you're sending out email pitches and making suggestions and asking for something. And so I started booking my dad on podcasts. It was going really, really well. And so at that point, I was doing podcast booking and I was still doing the other things. I was doing sales for him, client support, admin. And I'm like, Dad, I want to be able to make more money. And there's only so much money I can make if I'm billing you $15 an hour.
Got to raise your rates, Dad.
So he's like, okay. So I'm like, I hear from all your mastermind clients that I need packages. That's the key to being able to scale and be more profitable. And so he asked me a few questions to help me figure out what I wanted to actually make a business around, not just like VA services. And through those questions, like, what do I enjoy the most? What's in most demand? Where do people get the most value? It all pointed to this work of booking podcast interviews. And so interviewconnections.com was created. And over the summer of 2013, he helped me make a website for it, create packages and pricing. And then it officially went live in the fall. And that's when I launched my agency.
That's a great story. And I don't want to gloss over the fact that you did door-to-door sales. And it was a little different. You said it was fundraising, but door-to-door, that's cold calling. That's every salesperson's biggest fear is to knock on those doors. So kudos to you. How was that for you? Were you pretty comfortable with that, or was it scary and you had to get over it?
I loved it. I
Really?
loved it. Yes. I got into that when I was a freshman in college, and I saw a flyer on campus. I went to Temple University and there was a flyer that said I could make $10 an hour saving the environment. And I was like, sign me up, because I'm currently making $6 an hour at work study. I loved it. And it was crazy because the first time I did door to door, that first like second interview, I wasn't even getting paid. It was like a second interview. They needed to like see if you had the chops. I was going door to door in the projects in South Philadelphia. And I was like, whatever you can give. And people were giving me literally the change out of their pockets. And I'm like, this is so fun. I'm just talking to people. So I've canvassed anywhere from the projects of South Philadelphia to multi-million dollar mansions in Austin, Texas. And I just love it because I learned that people, for the most part, are really kind. You know, you get a few of the people in a bad mood, but people are pretty much happy to talk to you.
And I think in that environment, maybe they're more happy to talk to you, or they don't have their guards up. Plus, you're very charming, great personality. But of course, when you're calling on a business, sometimes it's more scary. However, I also like cold calling. My husband, Steve Miller. Steve Miller, we have to talk about your dad and my husband. But he said, you're a very sick person. But of course, when you're calling on businesses, you kind of expect that they're going to say no, or they're going to close the door or whatever. So it's so exciting when you get that interaction going. And as you said, people are kind and people are people, right? Everything's people. So I think that's very interesting. And to people listening, cold calling is just that. So there's an upside to it too. You get to know people you would never, ever have gotten to know otherwise, right?
Yeah. I mean, you said you did travel, like you were a traveling salesperson. I was sent to different cities, to DC, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Austin. Like I went all over, and I got to, how often do you get to go somewhere and actually just like meet the people, the individuals living there? It was just such a great experience. So I'm nostalgic for those days, but pay is not quite high enough to support a family.
Well, that's a great backstory that can serve you in so many arenas of your life. I love the fact that you said you asked your parents for advice as the mother of a 33-year-old. I know you're around that age. Good for you for asking and actually listening to your parents. And yes, your dad is you said he was known as the newsletter guru, Dan Kennedy fan. And of course, as I said, Steve, my husband, has been very involved with Dan Kennedy through the years. We have all his books. Steve's been to conferences, spoken to conferences. So that's fun, a fun shared background there.
Yeah.
And then he's into coaching, or he's semi-retired, mostly retired.
Yeah.
Dream business coach. And of course, that's our world too, coaching and consulting, helping people be more successful. So that's always fun too. Hey there. This podcast is meant to give you an uncopyable advantage. If you're ready to jump on the fast track, go to beuncopyable.com/K. You'll get the scoop on my books, webinars, personal consulting, and our Moose Market. It's all designed to help you stand out, sell more, grow your business and brand in a way that's truly uncopyable. Once again, that's beuncopyable.com/K. Now, back to the show. We were talking a little bit about the podcasting world. It seems like podcasts have been around forever, but they started out as something very different than what they've become. And that's what gave you the opportunity to be the first booking agency, official booking agency. And I have to say, when I heard that, I had to look that up. So I had some conversations with AI, and the podcasting world has really morphed from the beginning to the point where it became an opportunity for marketing yourself. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. In 2012, 2013, there were something like 200,000 podcasts in the world. Now there's probably 3 to 4 million. And at that time, podcasts were so small. They were also kind of interchangeable with internet radio. I don't know if you remember Blog Talk Radio, but a lot of people
who
were doing.
Yeah, I remember that.
For so long, my dad was, because he started his podcast in 2012, I think, he was recording it over instant teleseminar, which I don't know, that
I don't remember.
Like, it's just, you just call in, and it's like the quality has gotten so much higher now as there's been this huge growth of this industry. There's all these different amazing softwares, even Zoom, Riverside, like there's all these different ways to have a really professionally sounding podcast. But back then it was just a conference call line and recording the audio. It was hardly any video. Most podcasters at that time weren't doing video because there was Skype, but it just wasn't what was happening then. And so it was this very, very small platform. And because it was so small, PR agencies were not booking on podcasts. Like, I remember I had a client and his wife was very well known in her space. She would be regularly going to the Today Show to be like their featured expert in her niche. And so she had like a lot of PR, and I was working with her husband, who's more of like the online entrepreneur. And he's like, yeah, my wife won't do podcasts. Like, she wouldn't. And now she has a podcast, how times have changed. But, back then podcasts were not a reputable medium for so many people. But the reason that the entrepreneur, like my dad and the entrepreneurs that I was working with, saw the opportunity is because they saw it as a networking opportunity. It was a way for them to have a one-on-one conversation like we're having right now, and then also have their audience listen. So they could have 100 people listening to them have this conversation, and they could see how valuable that was. And then people started to pick up, and that's what really grew the industry, is because entrepreneurs started to take the hint that, to grow a business, I need people to get to know me in an authentic way, to be able to hear me speak long form. And I kind of don't want to have to travel all over the country to conferences constantly to be able to have those conversations. And that's I think why so many people are using podcasts.
It is. It's a great way to leverage your time and energy to be visible. And as I said, I have just been so blessed to have an incredible list of women I've interviewed in the last 2 years. And yes, and now they're in my network. And I love your point. I guess I hadn't just really verbalized the fact that, yes, I'm sitting down and talking with someone, often somebody I really admire, for 30 minutes, just one-on-one. So that's a great network builder. One of the things I notice is that there are so many podcasts that don't last very long. And my podcast now is 2 years old, Uncopyable Women in Business, which started out as sales. So that's a real badge of honor. It's hard to keep that going. And one of the things that makes it hard is getting guests, which of course is why you're here to talk about not just getting guests, but getting quality guests that will be guests that your listeners want to hear, and also that you really are motivated, you want to have in your network. So that's where you come in. So let's talk about, why is it important to have you help guests find the right podcast, which I know is your main focus, but then also it works the other way around. Someone like me, I want really good guests too. So when you're pitching someone to me, then that helps me vet who I'm going to invite on the show. So there you go. Well, your turn.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, first of all, it is a huge badge of honor and a huge accomplishment to be podcasting as long as you have been. I think some 90% of people who start a podcast don't even last 20 episodes, let alone 2 years, because it is a lot of work to have a show, to have the energy to put into it, to have the strategy of thinking like, what types of guests do I want? What do I want to interview them about? Guiding the interview. It's a lot of work. And also to match up the right guest with the right host, because this kind of goes both ways, right? As a guest, when you're going and getting yourself on podcasts and being interviewed, you have to go on shows that are in alignment, not only podcasts that have your target audience listening, but a podcast that is a good fit for you, where you and the host have some things in common. There's some things that you can relate on. Personalities mesh well. That's really important too. Like, I'm from the Northeast. I talk quickly, and I don't do well with like slow, like mushy kind of like touchy-feely vibe. Like that's not me. So my team knows not only the type of podcast I like to be on, but the type of host I like to connect with. So really knowing that is going to help make sure that when you're pitching yourself to podcasts, the hosts that you're pitching are also seeing the alignment and the possibility. And it's not just this spray and pray approach, because that's what's happening so much, is people are just blasting out a pitch to every show, and you can tell they're just kind of auto-filling the host's name. Like, I got a pitch this morning, Dear Jessica Rhodes. In what world do you address an email with the person's first and last name? It doesn't happen. So I know it's like an templated mass approach, and that doesn't work. And as a host, to have the longevity, you have to be booking people to interview that you actually want to talk to. because nothing is going to burn you out faster than having to sit there and interview with somebody that you don't actually have any interest in talking to. And that you're like, oh God, you couldn't pay me enough to do this, you know? So that alignment, both with personality, topic, it all has to be there if as a guest and a host, you're going to have longevity.
Well, I love that you feel like we're a match because I really enjoy my interviews, but I have to say some are more difficult than others. They're all great, but you're very easy to talk to. And that's important. I've gotten way better at interviewing since I started. In fact, it's always humbling to go and listen to those first episodes. But yeah, the spray and pray approach, which is, of course, not the way that I recommend selling, and you either. It's a waste of time, and it annoys people, and it's not really the best way to get that synchronicity that you're talking about. As I mentioned, now I'm getting a lot of applicants for the show because I've been on for 2 years. I've had these great guests. I've got a great audience, and I say no to a lot of guests. So that's a privilege that I've earned. Okay. I have earned that. But with the right conversations, I just love it. I love learning about new people like you and helping you, and you help me. Hey, it's great, right? Win-win.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about, of course, it might be obvious, but what are the advantages to being on a podcast that you can't get anywhere else?
So number one, it's the only place where you can actually generate content, thought leadership content, where you're able to respond to questions. I think some 80% of the population are responders, which means the content they create is best when they're answering a question. And a lot of people have trouble if they're like, if they're told to just make videos for social media, write a post. There's this stop of, well, what should I talk about? What would people want to hear about? But when you're interviewed and somebody's asking you a question, there's no resistance to answering the question because you know that they want to hear the answer. There's not like, should I talk about the importance of podcasts and how it got started? Who's going to care? But I'm going to answer it with full enthusiasm because you wouldn't ask me if you didn't care or you didn't think your audience cared. And so when you have this great content of you responding to questions, you can take the clips, like you can use a tool called Opus Pro, which is an AI tool. You grab the video interview from YouTube, you put it into Opus, and now you have 30 different clips that are 30 seconds to 2 minutes long. You post those up on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Facebook, and then say, if they like this clip, they can go listen to the full episode. So it fuels your social media with great content that has you speaking. And the energy of me speaking with you, responding to questions, is so much different than if I just put up my phone and just start talking. Like my energy is just lower if I'm just talking into a camera versus being live with you on an interview. So that's one of the biggest benefits. Search engine optimization is another huge benefit that I don't think people think about enough. Every time you're on a podcast, for the most part, the host is going to put a link to your website in the episode description. They're going to put that interview on YouTube that has your name, probably your website in the description of the YouTube. So when people Google you or ask ChatGPT, is this Jessica Rhodes person legit? She looks too young to have started the first agency.
Here's my whole ChatGPT rundown on you.
ChatGPT is like, yep, people have been linking to her website for 12 years. Like, it's all of those backlinks is what shows people through their internet and AI searches who you are. So it builds your footprint online. And then, of course, the visibility to other people's audiences. Most of us are doing a pretty good job marketing to our own audience. We'll email our list, we'll post on our social media. But to grow that audience, we need to go outside and be in front of other people's audiences. And podcasts are the best way to do that without having to leave your home. And then lastly, networking with the podcast host. If you want people to refer business to you directly, you have to have a good relationship with them, and you have to be somebody that people know and remember. And hosts remember their guests more than somebody that they see post on LinkedIn every so often.
I have to reach back just as an aside. Hopefully that didn't come through on the sound. But here's the latest book that Steve and I wrote, Uncopyable You, and it's about how to get people to know, like, trust, and remember you. So I had to bring that up because That is pretty much the secret sauce of this book. They probably know people that are in a position to buy or do whatever you want them to do. They know other people. They probably like other people. They trust them. But if those people leave and aren't on your mind, they won't remember you. So I love the fact that you said remember. So critical. I have to, I was taking notes. If you're watching online, you probably saw me taking notes. Your point about energy. Oh my gosh. I told you I'm recording a course right now, and it's so hard to get the energy that I'm having right now. Just naturally flows. And so that's why I really prefer live programs. I can, of course, still do them online, but if there's nobody listening, it's just a totally different thing. For people that want to be on podcasts, who are going to be on podcasts, I'm sure you recommend and you coach them on, you have to have these talking points, all these things in your mind that could come up. Because I suppose some podcasts, they ask you these questions, but for mine, anything could come up. So you've got to be kind of have those things in your mind and be able to think on your feet. We do have Opus Pro. And what's great, one thing about Opus is that it actually picks the clips for you and rates them by the best performing clip. So there are a lot of tools, but you've brought up really great points about the kind of exposure that you can't pay for anywhere else. And of course, if you need to hire Jessica because you want to be on the right podcast, and that will give you the kind of visibility and all the things that she mentioned that we really can't get anyplace else. And you can, of course, read what somebody wrote, but you feel like you know them so much better when you see them talking or hear them talking. I do post these interviews. My assistant does on YouTube. So check all the things that you talked about.
Love it.
So true.
Yeah. And I'll just add that this is such a good sales resource. I regularly will send podcast appearances that I've done as a guest to just this past Monday, I had an interview go live. I emailed it to my entire list because I know that if people who are on my email list who maybe saw my ad and opted in are getting my emails, if they go listen to me get interviewed on somebody else's podcast, I am now elevated to authority status versus somebody that has a lead magnet that got, you know what I mean? It's a different positioning, running an ad, selling something versus I'm an authority and people are interviewing me because they want to hear what I have to say. So use your podcast with your list.
Exactly. Use your podcast with your list. And I don't know if I said this while we were recording, but yes, I'm getting very picky about my guests. So you listening to this, if Jessica sent it to you, please know that she made the grade, which is not easy to do.
I feel so honored.
So what else can you tell me? And I guess I will look at your questions. Let's talk about one thing you said that intrigued me. What is the biggest pitfall coaches make in their marketing efforts that causes them to lose sales?
I mean, it's kind of obvious at this point, but they're not creating long form content. I can't believe how many coaches are marketing coaching online, and there's nowhere for me to hear them speak. I am not going to hire a coach if I am not able to first hear them speak before booking a sales consultation. I won't book a sales call with a service provider, a coach, a vendor, anyone, if I'm not able to first hear them speak. Sometimes there will be an Instagram reel where I can hear them speak for 30 seconds. I want to be able to do a deep dive. That is how buyers are behaving right now. They are binging your content before ever opting in. And if you have no content for them to binge, you are losing people before they even touch your website. And that's why, going back to the responder conversation, so many coaches are responders, because a great coach is not just showing up and telling their client what to do, but they're asking the right questions. They're responding to their clients' questions. And if you don't have any content for your audience, your future prospective clients to listen to, how could they possibly know if you're somebody that they would want to follow? So they're not creating long form content. They're losing so much potential business because they're not doing that.
That's an excellent point. And yes, so this podcast world that has happened is giving us these opportunities. And my husband, he's mostly retired now, but I shouldn't say mostly retired. He'll probably get mad at me for what I'm saying. He still does work and he loves to do his work, But he, for years, was a major speaker at events and was a member of National Speakers Association. And they had to have all these speaker reels and have a fantastic website that had all these videos and showcase them. And now, as you're talking about, this can all happen through podcasts, which even when you're paying someone like you to get you on podcasts, it's a lot less money than they'd be paying if they had to hire somebody to do video and audio content for them.
100%. I remember that just gave me a flashback like 10 years ago when I was pretty new working with my dad. He would advise people to if you want to make a speaker reel, book a conference room at a hotel and just film yourself speaking. Pretend that there's an audience there. Well, you don't have to pretend anymore. Just go get interviewed on podcasts and film yourself speaking. I always teach people too, one hack to get more video content. I'm not doing it right now, but you could set up your phone on a tripod and just film yourself in your room speaking into a podcast. So there's so many different ways to get content of you speaking when you use podcasts as the platform.
No, that's very interesting. So you're videoing yourself being interviewed because, of course, I've got this interview and it will be on YouTube. So you could download the interview or share it however you want. But you're saying add that extra layer of credibility as if someone's filming you.
Exactly.
That's a great tidbit. Now I want to ask, do you have any others? Now I'm putting you on the spot. So.
I know. Well, and just to give a little bit more context, so we have a client who is a cosmetic dentist and she primarily does podcast guesting for this content. And so she has this beautiful office in Manhattan and, this microphone and the couch. And so her team films her and the laptop where the host is, interviewing her is just out of frame. And so it looks like she's in some beautiful studio. She's doing a podcast on Zoom, but her team films her and then she uses that on social media. They actually have music. It's a whole basically B-roll video with text over it, but it's her speaking into a microphone. So it's great content, really good positioning. So I love that because you get the video interview that's recorded on Zoom here and on YouTube, but it's also just a different point of view to film yourself with an actual, camera. So I love that tip.
That's a great idea. And we already talked about the energy thing. When I'm filming something, when I'm recording myself doing a program, I'll play a podcast interview and I'll say, okay, Kay, there's your energy. This is who you are. And it's just a really big job to match that energy. So I love what comes out of these conversations. So let's talk about someone listening who's all in. They're like, yes, I want this. So how do they go about being a good guest? Is the first thing they do just reach out to you and you'll talk to them and coach them? Or what is the next step for someone listening that says, man, this is going to be my jam?
Yes, I know. If you hear this and you're like, this is it for me, I need to do this. Of course, you can come to us and book a call, interviewconnections.com/consult if you'd like to speak with me. But in terms of how to be a great guest, I want to give some tips there. Is just, first of all, be yourself and amplify your energy a bit, right? If we weren't recording, we would probably be a little bit calmer, but at the same time, you want it to be entertaining and engaging for people that are listening on, Apple Podcasts, going for a walk or something like that. So now that's a little tip for being on the interview. Be energized, be excited, be easy to talk to, listen really well, let the host speak, and then also have a period at the end of your sentences. Some people kind of trail off and ramble on, they're like, when do I stop talking? Say your sentences and end it powerfully. Before the interview, listen to the host podcast. I listened to your last 2 episodes, so I kind of got a sense of your style. You have some different formats. And so listen to the host podcast, look them up online. So I could come into this knowing that you're a sales expert, you're an author, you did, the muffler queen. So
muffler mama.
I love it. So get to know the host so you don't come in blind, because if you come in blind, not knowing who they are, what they do, what the style of their show is, it just starts things off on a really awkward foot. And the energy of the show will not be as good as if you can come in already having some points of connection. And then lastly, big tip for guests, have a call to action. Where are you going to send the listeners? We get inquiries every single day from people who want to be on podcasts. And we always ask, what website do you want to promote? And they're like, I don't have one. And I'm like, where Why do you want to pay me to book you if you have nowhere to send the people who hear you on a podcast? So you do need to have a home base on the web, whether it's a website or maybe it's a LinkedIn. Probably should have a website to build an email list, but have a place where people can go after they hear you on the podcast so that you can convert their emails and names and phone numbers and, have them on your list.
Excellent points. And as a host too, I don't have it anymore because I don't think that I need it as much, but I had wait a minute, I still do have it. It's just, you know what? It blends into the scenery. Energy, exclamation point. Smile, exclamation point. Eye contact to the end. And that's one thing I noticed, that at the end of the episode, I'd kind of be trailing off a little bit. And it really does take a focus to the effort to focus. And I agree. You really need to have a higher level of energy. When we stop recording, we'll talk a little bit, and it'll be a different tone. But this is more interesting to listen to, and you can tell what we're excited about. So those are great tips. I love them. Well, we made it to the end. I also love the fact, by the way, I'm just going to say this. If you're ever a guest, especially on my show, I don't care about the others. Yes, I do. It really does make it hard when there aren't those clear pauses. That's an excellent thing. I think I should even actually put that in my guest instructions, because it's really bad when you talk over the other person and, when I'm trying to find the break. So you did an excellent job. You are really an excellent guest. So I'm glad you didn't come on and be a real dud.
That would be very embarrassing for me, considering my line of work.
No, well, you were anything but. Just a delight to talk to. The links will be in the show notes for Jessica's call to action, which will be to go to her website, and all over the website, you'll see book a call. Find out, is this something that you can use to advance your career? And Jessica can coach you, like she's talking about, on the best ways to do that. So on that note, I just want to end by saying, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Kay.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Business. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. That helps me a lot. And be sure to visit the Moose Market at beuncopyable.com/store for more great uncopyable shortcuts. See you next time, and always remember to be uncopyable.